Pleasure to welcome the Secretary of State of the great state of Tennessee, Trey Hargett, to the program on the Matt Murphy Hotline as we talk about Voter Registration Month. Secretary of State, good afternoon. Hope you're well.
Good. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you. We haven't spoken, feels like a month of Sundays, but now's a good time to do it because it is Voter Registration Month. Tell us why this is important to you and why you're trying to get the message out.
Well, as you know, our team works with all 95 counties to run elections, and we really just believe that the most fundamental way people participate in our form of government is by exercising their right to vote. And you can't vote if you don't register, at least not in Tennessee. And we want to make sure that people get registered to vote and participate in the elections.
And obviously, everyone wants to believe that their vote matters. And you kind of referenced it in your answer there, Trey, that in Tennessee, we believe that we have the most integrous voting system in the United States of America. I think that the proof's in the pudding there. Would you not agree?
Well, don't take your word for it, my word for it. I mean, the Heritage Foundation's ranked Tennessee as number one in the nation for election integrity. Now, there's a lot of other states who are gunning for us and trying to change their laws and change their processes so they can be number one. But, you know, we want to make sure that when people in Tennessee cast their vote, they can know it's counted once, no more, no less, and so that they can have confidence in the elections. Because if you don't have confidence in the elections, that erodes your confidence in our form of government.
You know, where do we go? Because there's so much discussion about election integrity, not so much in the state of Tennessee, I'm proud to say, Trey, but across the United States of America. And I hear from a lot of our listeners how concerned they are about voting integrity across the country moving into 2024. Where do you recommend, for Tennesseans at least, that they find accurate election information? Is it as simple as going to your website?
Well, sure. You can visit govotn.gov. You can also reach out to your local election commission as well. You know, the key is that and we're reaching out to people through social media. We're always trying to work through other organizations now. We create a program called Your Vote Matters, in which we partner with nonprofit organizations and chambers of commerce, business organizations across the state, so that they will use their spheres of influence to help people understand how to participate in the elections, and then also to how to know that their votes being counted accurately and that the elections are being run honestly. So, you know, right now, Secretary of State's offices across the country are so polarized. And I recognize that I'm a Republican, that there's some people in this state as the presidential election year rolls around next year, they're going to tune me out, frankly. They're going to think that, well, he's the Republican Secretary of State, and they're not going to necessarily believe everything I have to say. And we want people to be able to also trust in other organizations out there that they are well connected to, whether it's church, whether it's business, what have you, that can help us continue to put out that trusted source of information.
Secretary of State Trey Hargett is with us for just a couple of additional moments. I know your time is limited, Trey, but I wanted to ask you more broadly if you had any suggestions, words of advice, or solace from a national perspective. And I know that you don't have control over the other states in this great union. Those secretaries of state have the ability to control their elections. But are there any words of advice that you would have for them should they take it? And any words of solace for the citizens of the state of Tennessee who watch what's going on in some of these other states and just kind of shake our heads?
Well, for my colleagues across the country, what I would say is you can't sacrifice integrity for convenience. And so we always want to make sure that every eligible person has the opportunity to vote, but you've got to make sure that you also have systems in place to protect them that. And I know it's frustrating for Tennesseans as they see some of the stories that they read from across the country. But I think the real key, too, if I were encouraging people, is listen to what Bill Haggerty said. I listened to him say this recently, is that while Republicans, frankly, were focused on process and law and arguing about those things in previous election cycles, frankly, Democrats were kicking their butts and go ahead and getting their votes in the bank. And so I think Republicans, you know, need to be more concerned with actually getting their votes in the box and actually going out and trying to campaign and work for it. And frankly, Democrats have been just out working Republicans in that way. But the bottom line is, you know, we call balls and strikes. For us, we just want every Tennessean, regardless of Democrat, Republican, Independent, get out and exercise their right to vote because it makes our society stronger when everybody gets out and participates.
It's National Voter Registration Month. Give me the website one more time before I have to say goodbye, Secretary.
Sure. GoVoteTN.gov.
GoVoteTN.gov for more information about what the Secretary's been talking about. Trey, come and see us sometime. We'd love to sit down with you a little bit longer. I know you've got to go. I appreciate you being on with us today.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good day.
Take care. There's Trey Hargett, Secretary of State, joining us for a few good minutes. Had to be out by 25. And look, I got it by like 10 seconds. Got him out of there by 25. So how good am I? It is frustrating because I'll say this, and I didn't have time to delve into it with Trey, but it is true. I watch Republican secretaries of state around the United States of America act in the spirit of integrity and honesty. And I don't see that with Democrats. Republican secretaries of state seem to, with maybe a few exceptions. I could point to Georgia as one of them, frankly, in the 2020 election cycle, certainly. They are careful to balance their political affiliation with a desire to keep integrity at the foremost of the system of government that we currently enjoy, which is the finest system ever devised by man. But that system crumbles if its foundation is cut out from underneath it. And that foundation exists on the balance of fairness. Only those are allowed to vote that are allowed to vote. Everyone is allowed to vote in an equitable fashion, meaning you're not going to be denied the ability to vote because of a condition of your birth, for example, unless that condition of your birth is that you were born outside of the United States of America and you've not assimilated as a United States citizen. But there are very few requirements in terms of how you get to vote in the United States. However, many secretaries of state around the U.S. have decided that they're going to put their thumbs on the scale for their own purposes. And it has absolutely destroyed our belief in the United States that there is a system that we can believe in. But not here in Tennessee. And that's what's most frustrating. Is that I can talk to Trey about voter registration month. I can talk to Trey about getting out the vote. I can talk to him about integrity at the ballot box. And he can point to the system in the state of Tennessee as an example of how to do things right. And then I ask him about Pennsylvania or Georgia or Wisconsin or Michigan. And he's going to shake his head right along with me and you. It is sadly a failure. I won't call it a failure. Let me take that back. It is an exploitation of our system. That if the voters select dishonest people to act in positions of power over our election system, that they can do dishonest things against the better judgment of the people or the legislatures that the people vote into power. Example, Pennsylvania. Local districts within local election officials, county election officials at the probate level, and even the Secretary of State allowed illegal voting in the state of Pennsylvania in 2020. They allowed dated ballots to come in after the date certain which they were to be cut off, and they commingled those ballots in with the legal ballots, which they were not permitted to do. And they did it anyway. Georgia did the same thing. So, I mean, not to delve too deeply into it, because we've talked about this. You know this as well as I do. The state of Georgia, forget whether or not we should be doing mail-in ballots. They did mail-in ballots. However, your ballot had to be postmarked by a certain day. Well, the Democrats argued, wait a minute, Well, if I fill it out before Election Day and it's postmarked after Election Day, you should count that ballot. No, that's not what the law says. The law says the postmark on the ballot has to be by Election Day, and if it's after Election Day, those ballots are to be thrown out. Legally, those ballots were to be thrown out. Do you know what they did with those ballots? They included them. They opened them, and they put them in the pile with the legal ballots. And once they're in the pile, you can't figure out what's legal and what's not legal. That's at least a part of the genesis of the American frustration on the integrity of the vote. Now, in the state of Tennessee, I don't think there's any question that our elections are on the up and up. I have every faith in Trey Hargett, and I appreciate him coming on today to promote the idea of getting the youngsters registered to vote. Tennessee is ranked number 1 in the country for election integrity.